वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकीम्। शृण्वतां सकथा कृष्णा पुण्य श्रवण कीर्तना हृदयन्तस्तौहि अभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदाम। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुलङ्गायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 4, Sati Fits Her Body. Text number 16. Kimva Shivakyam Shivam Na Vidustvat Anye Brahmadayastam Avikirya Jatasma Smasane तन्माल्य भस्म निकपालि अवसत् पिशाचैत् ये मुदभिर्दधति तच्चरणावसृतम्. Word for word translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kimva, whether Shiva Akyam, named Shiva, Ashivam, inauspicious, na viduhu, do not know, tvat anye, other than you, Brahma Adayaha, Brahma and others, Tam, him, Lord Shiva, Avakirya, scattered, Jataha, having twisted hair, Smasane, in the crematorium, Tatmalya Bhasma Nirkapali, who is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes, Avasat, associated, Visachehi, with demons, ye, who, Murdabihi, with the head, Dadati, place, Tat Charana Avastristam, fallen from his lotus feet. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Do you think that greater, more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this inauspicious person who goes under the name Lord Shiva? He associates with the demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body, and he is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from the crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. It is used, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It is useless to condemn a great personality like Lord Shiva, and this is being stated by his wife Sati, to establish the supremacy of her husband. First, she said, you call Lord Shiva inauspicious because he associates with demons in crematoriums, covers his body with the ashes of the dead, and garlands himself with the skulls of human beings. You have shown so many defects, but you do not know that his position is always transcendental. Although he appears inauspicious, why do personalities like Brahma respect the dust of his lotus feet? and place on their heads with great respect those very garlands which are condemned by you. Since Sati was a chaste woman and the wife of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the elevated position of Lord Shiva, not only by sentiment but by facts. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. This is the conclusion of Vedic scripture. He is neither on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead nor on the level of the ordinary living entities. Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Sometimes, when there is no ordinary living entity available, the position of Brahma is occupied by an expansion of Vishnu. But generally, this post is occupied by a greatly pious living entity within this universe. Thus, Lord Shiva's position is constitutionally higher than that of Lord Brahma. Although Lord Shiva appeared as the son of Brahma, here it is mentioned that even personalities like Brahma accept the so-called inauspicious flowers and the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Great sages like Marichi, Atri, Bhrigu, and others among the 9 great sages who are descendants of Brahma also respect Lord Shiva in such a way because they all know that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. In many Puranas, it is sometimes asserted that a demigod is elevated to such a high position that he is almost on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in every scripture. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita to be like curd or yogurt. Curd is non-different from milk. Since milk is transformed into curd, in one sense, curd is also milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is in one sense the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense he is not. Just as curd is milk, although we have to distinguish between the two. These descriptions are in the Vedic literature. Whenever we find that a demigod occupies a position apparently more elevated than that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is just to draw the devotee's attention to that particular demigod. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9.25 that if one wants to worship a particular demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is sitting in everyone's heart, gives one greater and greater attachment for that demigod, so that one may be elevated to the demigods above. Yantideva Vrita Devan. By worshipping demigods, one can elevate himself to the abodes of the demigods. Similarly, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of God, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This is stated in different places in Vedic literature. Here, Lord Shiva is praised by Sati, partially due to her personal respect for Lord Shiva, since he is her husband, and partially due to his exalted position, which exceeds that of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma, so Daksha, Sati's father, should also recognize him. That was the point of Sati's statement. She did not actually come to her father's house to participate in the function, although before coming she pleaded with her husband that she wanted to see her sisters and mother. That was a plea only, for actually at heart she maintained the idea that she would convince her father, Daksha, that it was useless to continue being envious of Lord Shiva. That was her main purpose. When she was unable to convince her father, she gave up the body he had given her, as will be seen in the following verses. Today, I want to summarize the verse by Her Grace Yamuna Leela Devi Dasi Mataji. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. Please apologize me and forgive me if I add any of my own interpretations. And please bestow all your blessings to perform to me and to my family to perform devotional service to Krishna. Continuing the conversation which Sati is having with her father, Daksha, this chapter is entitled Sati Quits Her Body. We heard in previous verses that how Sati has come actually against Shiva's wishes to attend the yajna which her father has organized. And Lord Shiva previously has warned her that don't go for the sacrifice because your father does not have any respect for me and you will feel very much scattered. So he gave her a forewarning. But Sati actually wanted to come. She was feeling very distressed that she was in dilemma whether to come or not to come. And ultimately she decides to come. And when she comes to the assembly, which her father has organized, just her mother and sister had received and welcomed her nicely. Just her, Sati's mother and her sisters. But her father, Daksha, does not even pay attention to her, neither does he smile, nor does he welcome. There is no warm welcome from his father. And Sati sees that even in the sacrifice which her father has organized, there were no oblations being offered to her husband, offered to Lord Shiva. Seeing all this, Sati recognizes that what Shiva said is true. My husband is not being respected in this assembly. And my father is still harboring those in feelings which has started a few chapters ago. Then she started having a conversation with her father. And she is actually, and Sati is actually chastising and blaspheming her father for not recognizing the exalted position of Lord Shiva. So, in the previous few verses and in few chapters, we are seeing that, and also in this verse, we are continuing to hear that he's trying to establish that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity, like her father is concluding, based on his external appearance. She's telling her father, like the way the Srila Prabhupada is also saying that not just through sentiments. She is not saying just through sentiments. Wives usually have the affection to her husband, being protective to her husband. A chaste wife does not like to hear if somebody is blaspheming her husband or saying bad things about her husband. Generally, as a chaste wife has these feelings. If somebody says something, wife will start revolting against them and not allow any blasphemy to be said against her husband. But in this particular case, Sati is not establishing by just the sentiments which she obviously has because she is the wife of Lord Shiva, but she is also establishing by facts from the scriptures and from whatever the sources that she has observed and she has also heard. So Sati is using both sentiments and logic to actually convince her father about the exalted position of Lord Vishnu. Sati's main purpose we can see in second paragraph of this purport, which Srila Prabhupada explains that, and also in previous few verses we see that Sati wanted to come for this yajna. She came against her husband's wishes. Now, usually a chaste and faithful wife would not be going against her husband's wishes. If her husband is saying that you don't go, you don't think, if the husband says that, the husband thinks that it is not appropriate for the wife to go, then the wife does not go. But in this case, Sati, who is Durga, the keeper of this material world, she has apparently gone against her husband's wishes and she has gone for the sacrifice organized by her father. Srila Prabhupada explains that the purpose of Sati coming to this yajna was not to meet her relatives. That is the reason that she tells to Lord Shiva, but her main purpose was to come and establish the position of Lord Shiva. She felt that as the wife of Lord Shiva and as the disciple of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the exalted position of Lord Shiva and to clear up the misconceptions which her father had about Lord Shiva. That was one of the main purposes that Sati came to this yajna to defend the position of Lord Shiva. But we will see that in spite of all her logic, which she gives to her father Daksha does not pay attention to all that Sati is saying. And ultimately, Sati gets very angry, disappointed, and frustrated, and then she decides to quit her body. In the coming verses, we will see that Sati will self ignite. She will ignite the fire within herself and she will burn her body to ashes because she tells her father, I don't want to keep this body any longer, which has been given to me by you, who does not respect an exalted personality, exalted position of Lord Shiva. So that will be the conclusion of this chapter, how she quits her body, how Sati quits her body. And then another whole pastime will get unfolded, how there will be fights being happening, and a demon will come up and he will come to kill Daksha. All the pastimes will be unfolded later. In this particular verse, Sati is establishing the position of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. Nor Shiva is on the position of demigods. Shiva is much higher than that. Shiva is neither the Jiva Tattva nor the Vishnu Tattva. Shiva is in between. There is a unique position which Shiva has that is called Shiva Tattva. In the Brahma Samhita, we can see that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Swami Thakur explains that the position of Lord Shiva is explained very nicely here. He says that in Brahma Samhita 19, Shiram yata dadi vikara vishesha yogan sanjayate nahi tata prita asti hetoha ya sambhutam api tata samupaiti karya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Just as the milk is transformed into yogurt by the action of acids, but yet the effect curd is neither same as milk nor different from its cause, which milk. So I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Sambhu is the transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. He says that Lord Shiva is milk transformed into curd. So if Krishna is milk, then the transformation of milk is Lord Shiva. Obviously, the origin of yogurt is always milk, so the origin is always Lord Shiva. Sorry, origin is always Lord Vishnu. But the transformation of Vishnu is Lord Shiva. So Shiva is almost as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Shiva is not like Brahma. In fact, we saw in third canto that Lord Shiva came into this universe. So in the spiritual universe, Lord Shiva has the eternal position as Sadashiva. So he's an expansion over there in the spiritual world. Like we see the transformation of milk into yogurt. So he is there in his eternal position. There is Sadashiva Loka. But when he comes into this material world, he does the task of assisting the Supreme Personality of Godhead in creating this material world. When Mahavishnu lies down on the causal ocean, which separates the spiritual and material world, and he glances at Pradhan, which is Durga, and Pradhan is a non-differentiated matter at that stage. That glance is actually carried by Shambhu and then he takes it into Pradhan. Durga, he is carrying the glance from Vishnu and impregnating Durga and creating and agitating then the entire material universe comes from that. The 24 elements, three modes of material nature from Mahatattva, and then we see the different universes manifested in this material world. So Lord Shiva is actually one of the earliest living entities after the material world was created. When Lord Vishnu glances at the Pradhan, Lord Shiva was already there. But in the material world, same like Lord Krishna accepts parents, he comes into this material world. In the same way, Lord Shiva accepted a father and he came from between the eyebrows of Lord Brahma and he started crying. So his name in this world is Rudra. Rudra means one who cries. But he is actually the origin of Brahma as well. So just for the purpose of coming into this material world, he is accepting Lord Brahma as his father, but his position is much higher than Brahma. As Srila Prabhupada says, Brahma is generally a very pious living entity who occupies a position of Brahma, but Lord Shiva's position can never be occupied by any living entity. So that is a unique position of Lord Shiva. Although he is in such an exalted position, when he comes to this material world, he accepts a very humble position and a very humble service to rendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. And that service is to accept or to be in charge of the mode of ignorance in this material world. And that is why we see Lord Shiva dressed up like this. His body is smeared with ashes, he's garlanded with skulls, and he's always roaming around crematorium. And his entourage is all ghosts, goblins, all those deformed creatures who are completely in the lower modes of nature. These are his associates. Why does he do this? He has an eternal position in Vaikuntha as Sadashiva. He is one of the originators of this material world. So why he is accepting this position? Srila Prabhupada and Vaishnavacharyas explain that Lord Shiva is the Vaishnavanam Yathasambhu. He is the best among all the devotees in this material universe. So he accepts that position of delivering people in the mode of ignorance. He accepted the in charge of mode of ignorance so that he can render this thankless service of delivering all the people who are in the lower modes of material nature. And this one quality which is very dear to Lord Krishna's heart. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita that this is the quality of compassion. And Lord Shiva is the embodiment of this quality of compassion. What is this quality of compassion? This quality is willingness of a devotee of the Lord to sacrifice a great personal inconvenience to render a service to the Lord for the upliftment of the fallen children. That is the mode of Lord Shiva, and that is what Goddess Sati is describing here. That externally Shiva dresses like this, so that the lower creatures like ghost goblins feels like associating with him, but his position is eternally transcendental. Thank you for giving me an opportunity.